Welcome everybody to another episode of Ops Unboxed with Kritmatta. We've got Manjit, who is co-founder and CTO from Kritmatta, with us here today. Hey Manjit.
Hey, how's it going, Si? Good to be here.
Not too bad, not too bad. We are recording this pre 9 a.m. because we have busy schedules and we're trying to get this in. So thank you especially for getting up and getting online at this time.
Yeah, no worries. I've got my strong coffee with me. That's getting me through this.
Nice. So for folks that don't know you, might not know about Kritmatta, it'd be great to get an introduction to you, your background, and maybe give us an overview of what Kritmatta is.
Yeah, sure. So, a little bit about me. I've been in tech for about 22 years, basically. Um, Funnily enough, it all kind of started when I was about 10 or 11, and I'm like a little bit older than you. And so, I got my first computer, which was a 486, and it kept breaking basically. And so I had two massive manuals because we didn't have the internet back in them days. I had like a MS-DOS manual and a Windows manual, and I kept breaking the computer. And I live in a little place called Warsaw, and like bought the computer from a place called Birmingham. So every time I'd break it, every Saturday, my dad would have to take me back to the shop, basically. And this happened for like about a month, like 4 or 5 times. I remember going down, and then the last time my dad was like, "If you break it again, you're losing it, basically." And so I ended up having to pour through these manuals and like figure out how it worked, basically. And that was kind of the start of my whole problem solving, like software IT journey, basically. And yeah, so a bit of a side quest there, but so yeah, so I've been doing it for about 22 years. Mainly being a software developer. Then I became an architect, team lead. Then I became a CTO. And I was a CTO for a data analytics company called Avora. I spent on and off for about like 8 years there. We scaled it to about 55 people, got around 2 million in revenue. And we raised about £8.5 million of funding. And like that really taught me a lot about what it takes to build a high performance team, and to build like a world class piece of software, basically. And so yeah, after I exited Avora, I built a candidate assessment platform called Saran, basically. And so the idea was that I would say, and this is a recurring theme in my career, which is that I learned a lot about data. I'm quite passionate about data, and so a lot of problems that exist in software and business, they're related to not having the right data at the right time. Like even from a recruitment perspective, this is always a challenge, obviously. And so my system would basically look at all the data points around a person. So we would look at your personality, look at your mindset, would look at your cultural alignment, and then it would also scan your CV, basically. I mean, I used AI to bring all of those together to kind of give you a score of the candidate. And so yeah, so I was building that for a couple of years, and that's how I actually met Kalpesh as well, the CEO of Kritmatta, and he was helping advise me and stuff throughout the years. And then he was telling me about a new project that he was working on in the agentic space, which was Kritmatta back then. And then he introduced me to my co-founder Duncan, and this is going back about 8-9 months now. And so obviously agents and agentic platforms are all the rage now, but they weren't as popular back then, and they were still in the early stages, basically. And yeah, so I had a chat with Duncan, I had a chat with Kalpesh, and the performance car analogy that Kalpesh always talks about came then, basically, because they were actually just looking for a developer. And I used the analogy. I said, if you want to, you're trying to build a Ferrari engine on a Skoda budget, basically, and with Skoda equity. So I kind of negotiated up to. I said, look, I can build you a Ferrari engine, but then then I need Ferrari equity, not Skoda equity, basically.
Yeah.
So that kind of I'm a little bit of a salesperson as well, as you can tell. And so yeah, so they kind of, thankfully they accepted, and like yeah, we've been building it for 7-8 months. And then yeah, that's led us here. We've just recently raised some funding from a VC, and yeah, we've got got about 70 people using the platform at the moment, and we're looking to aggressively scale.
I, I think Cowpush was one of the first people to talk to me about products or platforms like Kritmatta. It was very, very early on, and like you say, they are all the rage now. What I particularly liked my conversation with Cowpush that happened this week, and that episode will go out alongside this one for anyone who's watching or listening. Was around layering in that domain expertise and simplifying it for folks. I know everyone says it's simplified, but I have actually been on a few different agent building platforms, and it's still quite complicated. And I advise on RegTech and advise on it, so I'm considered technical in our industry probably. What were your sort of fundamental principles when building it? Was it simplicity? Was it power? What was it? Deep domain? What drove the design and build?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Si. And yeah, you've kind of hit on the core of the business that we're trying to build. In terms of back when we started, there wasn't really any simple tools to build agents. And you could argue there still isn't. Like, there were some quite top technical tools, like N8N you might have heard of. Like, that was kind of almost a gold standard, really. And you needed like a 2-month course just to figure out how N8N worked. I'm a software developer, like even I struggle like learning N8N. So like, what hope does a business analyst or a marketer have of using it, I guess? And so yeah, so that's been another recurring theme throughout my career, really, which is I try and have a lot of empathy for the end user, and I thought it could be a lot simpler than it was at the moment. And so yeah, simplicity was always at its core, and also speed. And like, as I'll show you on the platform in a minute, like I always wanted it so that you could almost do it on press one button and you have the agent created. So the way we've kind of ended up is, yeah, it's very simple to use. You can actually, and as I'll show you in the demo, you can actually just ask the agent. So like in the early days of ChatGPT and Claude and these kind of things, there was a big emphasis on prompting and prompt engineering and all of this kind of good stuff. And so we've almost come full circle, really, because now it's more about reverse prompting almost, which is like one of the debates we'd have internally is, oh, what do we need to create a prompt framework? Like, how much emphasis do we need to put on the online guide and all of this kind of stuff? And I'm like, no, actually, it's you just talk to the agent and you tell it what you want, tell it who you are, and then the agent knows itself the best. So it'll tell you how to what it could do for you, kind of thing. So that was definitely one of the big emphases. And then the other thing that you touched on as well was this concept of subject matter or domain expertise. Sorry. And so I think the big question when it comes to agents and with some of our competitors is, how do you make an agent smarter, really? So that's like one of the big questions I'm grappling with, and I have been grappling with for the last 7-8 months, because if you just ask ChatGPT to build a marketing plan for you, let's just use that as an example. If you ask ChatGPT to build a marketing plan for you, it's like having a really smart PhD student, or maybe someone who's just got an MBA in marketing or something like that. So it'll give you a decent answer, but you can't take it to your head of marketing or your C-suite board and say, hey, yeah, here's my marketing plan, basically. And so the bit that's missing, in my opinion, is subject matter expertise and domain expertise, basically. And so one of the big challenges and one of the big points of differentiation that we're trying to build into Kritmatta is, how do we load that subject matter expertise and that domain expertise into the agent? So you're getting the power of the agent, but then you're also getting something that's highly relevant to you and your business, basically. And so it kind of, instead of just being a graduate person with an MBA, it's like someone who's got an MBA who's been working at your company specifically for 5 years. And obviously you can tell the difference between quality of someone who's just started versus someone who's been there 5 years, and they eat, sleep, and breathe your company, and they've learned from all your mistakes and stuff, basically. So that's kind of where we're trying to get to with our platform.
Yeah, I was reading off the back of meeting Gabrish earlier on in the week. I was doing my own research and reading up on it. And actually, there are the marketing examples is the perfect example, because actually it's not very specific and bespoke to you. It's very, very surface level and academic. And when I speak to recruitment agencies at the moment, data comes up all the time, the quality of their data. And I'm a firm believer that the only competitive edge any recruitment agency has in their market is their skill that they have when they're on the phone, and their ability to extract data. And that data that's extracted is the only proprietary data they have, because everybody else has access to LinkedIn, everybody else has access to the job boards. I don't think there's any value in that anymore. So the fact that you can layer in AI and agents, etc., that then learn from your business what you're saying to it. I'm a big advocate of speaking to AI as well. When I'm in here, my missus always thinks I'm on meetings because I'm constantly talking to ChatGPT. It's just quicker than typing, right? I always encourage people to give it a go. I think it's so much quicker and easier to articulate speaking versus typing.
Definitely. Have you tried Whisperflow? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. I don't like the fact that Stephen Bartlett promotes it, but I do like it as a product. It was one of my contacts who's a video content chap. He sent it to me and he said, like, if you come up with ideas or you're trying to write scripts and so on and so forth, use this. I ended up downloading the desktop app because I was like, this is just a game changer. What it was best for was like writing my LinkedIn post, because I write all my own content. I just try and make sure it's always me that types it, writes it, so it's my tone, and I take pride in that. And actually what I found was so much easier was just hitting Whisper, talking at it with some ideas, and then refining it in the box. So yeah, it'd be very cool to see how you can speak to Kritmatta.
Yeah, so that's actually something in the lab at the moment that we're building.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely one of the priorities and one of the big modalities that's really in demand, and what we're hearing from our customers, that they're really interested in that. And yeah, just to go back to the marketing thing for a second, so there's kind of a bit of a dirty secret when it comes to AI in general. And the dirty secret is that from a coding perspective, AI agents are everywhere. Like I'm probably, conservatively speaking, like 7 or 8 times as productive as I used to be when I coded manually, old school, as you'd probably call it now. But that level of adoption that we have in software, and maybe even like vibe coding, like I would argue that vibe marketing or vibe sales or even vibe recruiting hasn't really taken off. And this is kind of one of my soapboxes that I like to stand on. Sorry, so bear with me. And so my theory here is that uh, the output that these agents and these LLMs create, they're about 85% of the way there. So they're not 100%. And like if I ask it to write some code, it's pretty much like 96 or 97% there, basically. But with marketing or sales or content, there's still that gap, basically. And I can't see that gap getting closed, basically, because when you're writing some code, just to go off on this in a second for a second, when you're writing code, like let's say the code says add 2 numbers to create a sum, for example. That's like in a very basic example of some code. So then the AI knows, okay, I put these 2 inputs in and I got this output and I was right. And so that's kind of called deterministic. And so, but when you're asking to create a marketing plan, or when you're asking to send a cold email to someone, there's not necessarily a black and white answer to that kind of thing. So, and that's why these LLMs really struggle in that scenario, because they can't close that feedback loop fast enough, basically. And so I think if you're a recruiter or a salesperson or a marketer, if you're good at any one of those, and if you've got a passion for those, in my opinion, I think your job's safer than ever, almost, and it just means you've got more leverage. Whereas if you're poor, or unfortunately, probably if you're like an entry stage, then you're probably going to struggle, basically, because those are the people that will get replaced. But if you're good at what you do and you've got empathy and you've got a passion, I think this is a good thing, basically. But yeah, the reason I bring that up is because that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to solve in the platform, which is that, okay, it's not, how do we get you to 100% like we have in code kind of thing. So if we're asking you to do competitor market research, we're asking you to create the first draft of a blog post, how do we get it from that 85% to 95 or 98 or 99? And that's where we try and layer in that domain expertise. So like, for example, if I asked it to create a blog post in Kritmatta, we would say, okay, tell me about the tone of voice. Like, do you have a style guide in terms of tone of voice? Tell me about all the other posts that were created. Tell me about the performance of those posts. Tell me about your ICP. And so when you load all of that information in, then that's going to make the post, that's going to get it those extra few percentage points, basically, where you're still going to have to do some work, but you'll have to do less work than before, basically.
I love the idea of like closing that gap, getting closer to that 99%. I've actually never thought about it in that way, but that is so good. I think when I first started using ChatGPT, I was just new chat every time, asking it things, and then I discovered projects, and I was like, wow, this is actually so good because I can upload all my sources, etc. And now all my clients that I do audits for have their own project, and the scope document goes in there. All of my summary notes and transcripts go in there. Basically, any bit of research I do. I even put photos of the whiteboards from my audit sessions in there now. And ChatGPT does a pretty good job of, if you use the same color pen for the same thing, as in like black is step, red is lag, or whatever you do in your swim lanes, it's very good at doing that. And I guess that's kind of what you're saying. You know, you're asking it for more stuff to help you narrow down and where you're trying to get to and what outcome you're looking for from the exercise.
Yeah, exactly. And that's you're doing it in a more advanced way. So you've built up that expertise and that muscle memory in terms of, you intuitively know that I need to give it more context to get better output. But if you've just started using ChatGPT for the first time or something, you're just going to be like, oh, this is rubbish. Like, this isn't getting me where I want to go, kind of thing. And so, yeah, so you can learn the skill and get better at it. And that kind of alludes back to what I was saying, that if you're good at your job, and you've got you're open-minded and you're willing to experiment and see what works and what doesn't work, then I don't see it as a threat to you. I think even it was Amazon or Google turned around yesterday, or a few days ago, and they announced that they actually started to hire in more developers. And so, which is really amazing, really, because everyone was like, oh, developers' jobs are dying, like no one needs a developer. And even in Kritmatta, for example, we're hiring developers, but the developers we're hiring are very different from the kind of developers we'd hire 5 years ago. So we're hiring more like full stack developers who we expect to be able to do front end, back end, and even some of the design. Whereas before we'd hire very segmented developers who were just specialized in a particular vertical.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. Right, let's have a walkthrough for Kritmatta. I've certainly been recommending that folks go and have a look at it when they're starting on their AI journey. You know, I speak to a lot of founders, and they're of a certain age, and they're interested in kind of seeing the art of the possible. So I'll certainly be signposting my conversation with Kalpesh and this episode of Ops Unboxed to them as well now.
Yeah, sounds good. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, please. And then I will add it to the stage once you've shared. Oh, yeah, there you are. 1 second. Right. And we are sharing.
Okay, great. And so what I've done here is I've come straight into the agent creation, basically. And so I wanted to like show just how easy it is to actually just start creating agents with very little prompting or very little information. And so I'm just going to talk about myself for a second. So I'm like, I'm a CTO of a fast growing startup. Tell me about the ways you can help me. And so, yeah, so this is kind of like the reverse prompting that I was talking about, basically. And so instead of me trying to figure out how to use it or to read some sort of manual to say, okay, what are the different ways you can help me? How can you do this and how can you do that? And so it can already see that I've connected to Google Workspace and LinkedIn. And then it tells me about the ways that it can help me. So triaging my inbox, drafting replies, searching and retrieving, organizing my inbox, reviewing my upcoming schedule. And so these are all agents I've actually already created so in my system, so that it's allowing me to do all of this stuff. And another mental model, just while I'm here, that I like to think about is that if you I've had many personal assistants before, and so this is kind of almost like having a digital personal assistant basically. So a lot of stuff that I would give to that personal assistant, this can now do at a fraction of the cost basically. And so yeah, so it's it can connect to LinkedIn and help me with things there. It's connected to my Google Drive, so it can kind of organize all my content and help me reorganize folders as you know, they always expand and become chaotic. Research and intelligence is another one of the good ones, where it can search the internet, scrape job postings, do companies lookup, and yeah, so it tells me exactly how it can help in terms of planning, thought leadership, reporting, due diligence. And just to give you like a simple example, it can also search the internet um, and um, and do things based on that. So we're trying to do a big content and marketing push at the moment. So I can say, can you help me? So before, like I would have to use like a really expensive tool, like a SEMrush or something, and then it would have to go away and do all the rankings, and I would have to go in and do what it can do. And then yeah, so we can run a web search, see the results, and then it can actually send me those things as a message, basically as an email. And so yeah, so that's just one area of it. It can analyze my emails, and it can connect to all of my sources, which I was going to talking about earlier. And then this is what really makes the system powerful compared to a lot of the other tools that are out there, in terms of if you're just using a standalone agent, there's only so many things it can really do. And that the power of the platform really comes from the different sources that you can connect to. Because the way I like to think about it, Sai, is that it's kind of connecting the dots for you. So in the old days, maybe you would just have your fax machine. I'm going back way back now. You just have a fax machine and you just get faxes. Then we had email, and then after email we had Skype, where you start getting messages, and then there was an explosion in terms of now to the present day. You have your Slack, you have email, you have your LinkedIn inbox, you have your WhatsApp, and you're just being bombarded with new information all the time. And so, one of the directions that we've taken with the platform is, well, why isn't anyone connecting the dots,
Mm.
basically? And so that's kind of a core part of the platform that we've built, that we can connect to your Microsoft, your Google, your WhatsApp, your Slack, your HubSpot, and we're expanding this list all the time, basically. And so, what you get with this, to go back to my data background, is you kind of get a single source of truth. And then what it means is that when I'm building agents, when I'm talking in the agent builder, I can say, okay, I'm working on a new feature. For example, we're talking about voice earlier. So let's say I'm speaking to my co-founder, Duncan, about voice. Maybe he's put a spec together somewhere. And maybe I've sent him a message on WhatsApp about it. And I've also sent him a message on Slack. So the system does something called entity resolution, and it builds something called a knowledge graph, just to get a bit more technical about it. And what it does is it knows who Duncan is all across those different systems. And it knows that there's a project called Voice, and then it can basically connect those different people up, connect those projects up. So you get like a single version of truth and a single like intelligence layer that spans all of those things, basically. So that's kind of
Mm.
like the grander vision and the underlying technical layer that makes everything possible, basically. So that's kind of a big part of the platform, basically. And so we already have like a bunch of agents that we've already created as well. And so, for example, there's an agent that scrapes the web and does company's house due diligence. The email morning one I've already gone through. You can build personalized outreach. Going from a recruiter and HR perspective, you can create a candidate qualification script. You can do vacancy breakdown. You can help it to get it to summarize CVs. You can do a Slack channel digest, as I was kind of talking about. Hidden talent pool finder, so a general research assistant. And so yeah, you can see like there's already a wide range of agents that you've got here. And so the idea is almost that you don't necessarily have to start from scratch. And so a lot of people, that when we're talking to our customers, they kind of always struggled with like blank page. And so then the idea is you just click on one that you're interested in. It tells you what it does, and then you just activate the agent, and then you're off to the races, basically. So that's kind of one of the key areas, basically, that we've built out. And then another thing that's in beta at the moment is we've built out like an AI GTM agent. And the idea behind this is that you kind of we've built like we haven't just built an agent platform. We've built like a AI infrastructure layer for people, basically. And so we were doing all the connections to your different sources. We're looking at all the data, and we're getting smarter and smarter. And so we've got a couple of different specialized agents that we want to create, but this AI GTM called Vega is one of the first instances of this, basically. But we've got a number more that we want to create in recruitment, HR, sales, marketing. And then the idea is that you define your ICP. So for example, I've got a couple of different ones here, and then it can kind of go off, enrich leads, draft the messages, send the campaigns, and actually show you the results and get smarter and smarter as it goes, basically. So yeah, so that's like a big area that we're also going into. And then one other thing that I just wanted to touch on finally was this concept of transparency. So one of the other bits of feedback we always got, so was, well, how do I know what you're storing, and how do I know what's in the data? And so this is you can actually see what information here. This is quite a new account, so you can't see too much, but you can kind of see the activity log, the knowledge profile, and you can actually even go in and delete information. So if it's got some information you don't want it to have, it can actually delete it, basically. And this comes back down to a bigger piece, around trust and transparency, really, which is that a lot of people are quite nervous about agents when we talk to our customers. And as I said at the beginning, I try and lead with empathy. And so we're trying to make the platform as trustworthy as possible. And so one of the big foundations for us to do that is to actually show you exactly what the platform's doing at any time, basically. So yeah, so that's a quick whistle stop tour of the platform.
Yeah, awesome. The AI infrastructure layer line, I mean, that's definitely going to get clipped, but it's also going to make the post, because I think that's a really good way to look at it. Interestingly enough, I think the ready to run agents is such a good move and a good play, because actually, like you say, folks, if it's blank canvas, it's difficult sometimes for people to understand the art of the possible. And I think for folks that are really starting to be experimental and starting to be open-minded around AI, I think that's a great way to start. Excuse me. Especially around things like that I know agencies are doing. So I go into agencies all the time, and the one that I saw there was the candidate qualification script writing. So I literally work with an agency now where they go into ChatGPT, put a job spec in, and ask it to write it. And they do it via new chats all the time. And when I first went in there, they weren't even on the paid plan, and they hadn't had their privacy settings on, etc. Like, so much risk, right, around that. And I get why people are nervous, because you hear about the horror stories. So actually, something like a Kritmatta with the ready to run agents, which can just lift and shift the activity that people are doing, let's say in a standard ChatGPT type system or tool, they could have that running for them here. They could use that here. But the added benefit there is Kritmatta, your Kritmatta, is learning from you, constantly evolving and understanding what you do and what you like. I think that's a really, really powerful play. I actually didn't think about that as a thing to talk to people about, actually. So if folks are using base level ChatGPT prompting individually everywhere, actually leveraging Kritmatta might be a better option in the long term to start building that knowledge.
Yeah, and so you touched on another area that we're expanding into now that we've got funding, which is something we call organizational knowledge. So
Mhm.
the term needs a bit of workshopping. It's not very catchy at the moment. But you're kind of touching on one of the big challenges of using something like a ChatGPT, which is it's very single player mode. And so one of the big opportunities we see in the LLM and agentic space is how do you make it multiplayer? How do you make it more organizational friendly? And so we're looking at ways in a safe and secure way. Like if you build some knowledge, how do you share that knowledge with your team, basically? Or more importantly, how do you share that knowledge with the other agents that are running in your team? You kind of talked about like maybe you've got a particular type of screening questions that you want to run. Maybe you've created a prompt in ChatGPT where you analyze particular job descriptions or particular candidate profiles and stuff, and then you've made it just right. But then how do you share that with your other colleagues and their agents? And so we've already built the ability to share agents across users. So that already exists. So if you create a particularly good agent that's doing a really good job at analyzing job descriptions or something, so you can actually share that already. But there's another layer below it, which is how do you share learnings, basically. And so that's going to be one of the big areas that we're trying to build out in the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, I mean, there are some horror stories at the moment because there's lots of risk attached to it around having people just individually on their own AI journey. The most recent one was a note taker that a consultant had, and they just switched the email address on the note taker to their personal email address and then resigned and just walked off with like a year's worth of notes from their market and stuff, and just said, I've got no idea what you're talking about. So I think from a commercial perspective, as a business, if I put my COO hat back on, I would want guardrails, right? And I love the idea of, yes, let's go and experiment, let's go leverage AI, but let's put it with some within like you say, organizational knowledge. Actually, I thought multiplayer was a good name for it. Multiplayer mode. I think that sounds great. In recruitment, and in particular myself, when I go into agencies, I'm always, when I do my audits, I deep dive into processes. Like, how do people work? Is it documented? Do you have processes? Does everyone work in a standard way? And what I always find is that there is what I call tribal knowledge living in and around the agency that people have. Like, someone knows that this hiring manager likes people who have worked at this business, and that stuff's important because it helps you make your placements, or this interviewer is difficult on this topic, or this test is particularly, little things that you just know helps you get deal cycles completed. And if you're going to start, and that's never documented, like it's very, very rarely documented. No one bakes that into process. And I try and help people do that. But there's one thing baking it into the process of what your recruiters are doing every day. And it's another thing trying to bake it into actually your agent workforce that's working on behalf of you. So I think that's going to be super, super exciting. One of the other points I wrote down was the transparency element. It's crazy the swing in the industry between people that are happy for everybody to have their, the company's paying for everybody to have plus on ChatGPT or whatever it might be, and they're like, yeah, fill your booze, just like go and learn, versus like I heard the other day that there's an agency that's blocked the domain, like you can't, they block the URL on their internal system because they don't want
I know a lot of people like that.
Yeah. The transparency piece, what's the feedback like when you speak to people about that? It'd be interesting if anyone's sort of come off the ledge about AI off the back of it.
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the big big areas that we've kind of focused on based on user feedback. So obviously, when you're running startups, everyone says talk to customers, and that was always what early on. That was always one of the early things. Like, how do I trust it? Like, what you doing with my data? Like, but you saw all those sources that we say we can connect to. Like, some people that makes them nervous, and it's totally understandable. Again, like talking about the empathy piece, like you don't know what the hell could be happening in the system, and so yeah, so we built it from the ground up to inspire trust really, and so that was one of the big features that we built out. And we're still in the process of building it to make it even more transparent and even more clearer. And like, yeah, so one of the natural successions was, okay, I can see the data. Now, how do I delete that data?
Mhm.
And so ultimately, we want the user to feel in complete control of what information the LLM has, what it's doing with it, and ultimately, yeah, the right to remove information from the LLM. And so, yeah, that's really important. And you also hit on a really other important point, which is guardrails. And so ultimately, the way we're positioning Kritmatter is that yeah, so if you've just got loads of people running in single player mode, then you kind of almost have to implement those guardrails individually. And so one of the things you get out of the box with Cryptmatter is deeper and more powerful guardrails in the first place. And so even though the platform is more capable, there's more guardrails there as well, so that you don't have to worry about um, someone signing on with their personal email address and buggering off with all the data, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I know that we've got a hard stop at 9 o'clock. The one thing I was going to ask you to finish off on, as someone that's building the business, building this type of business now, is where do you see this landscape in 2027 and beyond? Any great predictions? Like, is AI going to take us over? Like, are we going to is there going to be fundamental change in how tasks and productivity is completed and generated across our industry, or do you think it's going to be slow and steady?
So it's a good question, sorry. So just to get a bit philosophical about it all, even
Yeah.
for 10 to 9 on a on a Thursday morning. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek, so I read a lot of like books, and a lot of people talk about this concept of the singularity, which you might be familiar with, which is that the point where AI can start writing its own code and improve itself. It just kind of goes on an exponential loop, and then you end up with like a digital god, for lack of a better word. Basically, you end up in ASI. So you have AGI, which is artificial grand intelligence, which is where AI is at your level or at the level of a smart human, and then you have ASI, which is super intelligence, which you can't even really imagine. Um, I guess. AI is rapidly improving and it's rapidly getting more powerful. And to steal something from Demis Hassabis post podcast I was listening to, which is that you're working on the exponential. So we're kind of surfing the wave of these LLMs and stuff. And so every couple of months they're getting more and more powerful, and therefore our platform's getting more and more powerful. So they're talking about the platform being 100 times more powerful and providing 100 times more value in 6 months or a year. And so we're anticipating our platform is also going to be provide our customers with 100 times more capabilities. And so the key point or the key term that always comes back in my mind, sorry, is that the future's already here, but it's unevenly distributed. And this kind of goes back to your point that you were talking about earlier, which is that some companies don't even want to let you type ChatGPT into the browser, whereas some are using agents, they're using OpenClaw, they're using tools like Kritmatter, and they've kind of got 10x leverage. And so ultimately, what my meandering point here was that some companies and some people are really going to explode, and they're going to go like have game changing impact with their companies. And but there's still going to be a lot of companies and a lot of industries where they're still like doing photocopying and sending faxes and all of this kind of stuff basically.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess to answer to the final point of my answer to that question is that some people will be fundamentally changed, but I think overall the society will still, and government and will still be slow to adopt this in certain places. So some places will move really quickly, such as technology, such as sectors that are very technology focused, but other sectors will still move slow. So yeah, in 6 months' time, some people will look like they're 10 years ahead, and some people will still look like they're in 2026.
Yeah, nice. The evenly distributed point is great. I love that. Another clip. Look at that, Manjit.
Yeah,
You
I
might
stole it off someone, so that's not mine.
No, you don't have to say that. Well, listen. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on. I think you're better at showing Kritmatta than Cowfish, and I'm about to call him and tell him that, because that was very good actually, and I'm going to get this across to a couple of folks I know. Yeah, more the same. I think we'll have to get you back on in the next 6 to 9 months, because as the product develops and you've got more stuff coming, I think we've got to start show people as it progresses. So big thanks. I will hit stop recording now. See you guys.